So welcome everybody this afternoon. My name is Holly Morehouse. I'm the Executive Director of Vermont After School. And I would just like to start out by thanking all of you for being here this afternoon and for coming forward in this way to think about how we can expand access to summer programming for Vermont's children and youth. It's great to see so many of your faces, and we really do appreciate your interest and your willingness to think outside the box and how we can really expand what we're offering. As you know, this effort, the Summer Matters for All effort, has come together under Governor Phil Scott and in partnership with Senator Bernie Sanders, the Agency of Education, the Agency of Human Services, and a whole host of other partners. And Vermont After School, we feel honored to be able to work with this group and with all of you across the state to try to meet this challenge. As we've said before, summer 2021 couldn't be more important for our children and youth to help them re-engage, connect, learn, heal, to support working families, and really to use this opportunity in Vermont to explore what we mean by universal access or expanding access for summer and for after school all across the state, and reaching every child and youth as best we can. So on the call today, everybody is muted because we have a rather large group. I invite you to use the chat at the bottom of your screen. You should be able to click on the chat to open that up. We're going to run through basically the grant application through the different sections, talk about who's eligible to apply, how to apply, what supports are out there to support you in doing your application. We will collect questions in the chat throughout, and then we're going to save a chunk of time at the end to answer any questions that you may have. So with that, I am going to share my screen and actually go to the grant application. So the grant application was emailed out. It's also available on our website, and I'll show you in a second how to get there. But first, we just want to walk through some of the main components of what's in there. So the grant purpose really, as I said, is to expand access. It's to expand access to summer learning programs where few or no services currently exist. So if you're in a part of the state where there are not many opportunities in summer, this would be speaking to those areas. It's also to increase affordability. It is for children in kindergarten through 12th grade. So a lot of different ways that a program may increase affordability, sliding fee scales, increasing staff, a number of different options there. It is also aimed at increasing access for traditionally marginalized populations, vulnerable populations, students with special needs, and to eliminate some of those barriers that we have in our state, whether due to geography, socioeconomic factors, or other demographics. There are a few key funding priorities, and these will show up in the actual grant application. So here's what they are. First is addressing affordability. So if you've listened to the press conference on this, you heard Governor Scott and Senator Sanders both talk about this priority to make access to programs affordable. So free, low cost for children, youth, and families. Once again, expanding access in parts of the state where there are few or no options currently available. Increasing program slots for children and youth. So if you're running a program currently and you're serving 40 children and youth, and this grant opportunity would allow you to serve 60 or 80, then that's a priority area. So how do we expand what we're offering so that more can participate? The other area of expansion is also by increasing days, weeks, or hours of programming. So if you're currently running a 4-week program, and with additional funding, you might be able to run a 6 or 8-week program. That would also be something that this grant could support. I mentioned making sure that underserved populations are well represented in the mix of children and youth who are able to participate in summer programs. You know, there could be a variety of strategies of how you might be able to expand or add enhancements or staff or transportation or other outreach to increase their participation. And similarly with students with disabilities or special needs, whether it's providing one-on-one support, a behavioral specialist, additional staff, or so forth. The next section goes through the example of eligible activities. These are just examples to give you a feel. It was very important to the governor's summer team that worked on this that we really try to keep it as open as we can. So it can be used for staff. It can be used for specialized staff around academics or social emotional learning. It can be used, you know, for space, to add a new site, establishment of a new program if you're starting something new, to provide mental health supports, activities for youth to explore careers, gain workforce, hiring high school students to work in your program, integration of social emotional learning. Oh, can you hear me now? Okay. Transportation, food, equipment, and other engagement activities. I'd like to pause here for a second to stress that we are looking at elementary school, middle school, and high school. And we recognize that the structure of programs can vary by those age groups, and are, you know, seeking your help and ideas and support on how we expand for each one of those age groups across the state. Eligible applicants, so nonprofit organizations, municipalities, Parks and Rec programs, licensed and regulated providers of school-age childcare, publicly or privately owned summer camp programs. So it's pretty broad. Schools are not eligible to apply through this funding mechanism. We do on the website have a couple of links both for public schools and for independent schools. There are some other funding streams that they can look towards out of these federal dollars for funding. Our timeline is pretty quick because we're trying to get the money out to programs as soon as we can. So we appreciate your understanding about that. We have also tried to make the grant application as streamlined as possible to make sure that you have time to do it. So they, today is the 20th of April with this webinar and the opening up of the application. Applications are due May 5th. We will let folks know by the 26th of May, and then funding period would run from June 14th through the end of August with a final report due in September. There are at least $1.5 million available in funds, and we've set up a grant award range from $20,000 to $75,000. We wanted to make the awards large enough so that you could actually impact change in your communities. The higher range is really for obviously larger effort, starting a new program, adding a site, expanding in a meaningful way. But the whole range is available to you depending on what your budget and your needs are. The application will be submitted online. There is an electronic form. You are able to start your form and save it and continue to work on it and go back and change it up until the point of submission. Once you submit it, it will be considered final. We have also set up a survey form to collect questions about the application. And as those questions come in, we will be processing them and answering them and posting them on a frequently asked questions page so that everybody has access to the same information. I am going to take you over to the website so you can see where to find the application and the other supporting resources. And then we'll come back to the application itself, and Suzanne Birdsall-Stone will walk through the components of the application. If you haven't been to the Summer Matters section of the website yet, this is what it looks like. If you go to vermontafterschool.org, across the top, this section, Summer Matters, has all kinds of resources for all of you, anyone providing programming or looking to support programs this summer. There are resources around training for staff, a staff hiring campaign. There's resources aimed at youth to find programs and job opportunities, for schools to connect to community-based programs and existing summer camps, for families to support young people in engaging this summer. The health and safety guidance will be posted there as soon as it's ready. And then there is a summer program map where hopefully all of your programs are already listed. And if not, feel free to submit a survey and we can make sure to get you on the map as well. If you go under Summer Matters, you'll see the summer grant program listed. And it has all the information that we just went over about the dates. It has the link to the online application. If you don't already have it and you'd like to download a PDF version of the grant application or the RFP, you can click on it there. It goes over some of the priorities, eligibility, and so forth. Once we have some frequently asked questions together, we will post that link on here as well. In the meantime, if you have questions after this webinar that you'd like to submit, you can use this link right in the center here to click to this form and enter your questions there. I am going to go back to the application and pass it over to Suzanne.
Thank you, Holly. So it's nice to see so many people interested and ready to go with summer learning for 2021. And so I'm going to go through the different components of the grant application. I do want to note, we know there are a lot of questions coming into the chat, and we'll answer some of them. Nicole is answering some of them, and then at the end, we will answer more. And if there are any questions we're unable to answer because of time limitations, or we need to do a little research, we will get back to you on those, so they won't be left unanswered. So this is the grant application page. Basically, we're asking for, who are you? What's the name of the organization? How can we contact you? And Holly, if you could scroll down a little. How much funding you're asking for. If you're not the fiscal agent, who is the fiscal agent? You will need a DUNS number, which might be new for some people. And that's a live link where you can go and put in an application for a number. And by the time you submit, you probably won't have one, but you can then submit it to Vermont After School afterwards. We're asking you for other identification information for your program. And then on a typical day, how many youth do you anticipate serving? And what age range will this grant serve? So it can be elementary and middle, or just middle, or however that looks for you. Would you please also include your free and reduced lunch rate? And that's a live link too from the 2021 AOE free and reduced lunch eligibility report. Thank you, Holly. Could you go to the next page? And include the title of your program or project and the purpose of your grant. So just a couple of sentences. You'll have more room later to say more. Now the assurances here, I'm going to go through the assurances with you. I will let you know that when you go to fill this application in online, you're going to have there's going to be a couple of things that happen. The first thing is you need to say that you're eligible by meeting either being a nonprofit organization, municipality, licensed/regulated provider of school-age childcare, or a privately or publicly owned summer camp program like Holly was talking about, if you're able to say that you are one of those eligible applicants, you'll be able to go to the next window. The next window is asking you to agree to these assurances. So this is for your planning purposes. We don't want people to spend a lot of time filling out an application that in the end they weren't eligible for, and I'm sure you don't want to either. So that's included. We're asking that the program is in a safe and easily accessible facility or place, has low or no cost options for eligible students, that there are outdoor activities and enrichment. All staff and volunteers and partners are vetted ahead of time, including criminal background checks. You're going to provide appropriately trained, certified, and/or licensed staff. That there are equitable opportunities for transportation if that's applicable, and that you have adequate insurance. Vermont After School Matters will provide you with some technical support, and part of getting a grant is to participate in that. And then follow all health guidance, and that's going to include the summer camp guidance and food service guidance, which hasn't been published yet but is coming. AOE will probably let us know when that comes through, and we can share that link with you. And then ensure that healthy snacks and meals are available. If you're serving them, that they comply with the summer food service program and meal pattern, and there are some links there to help you define that. You also will need to, because they're federal grant dollars coming through the Agency of Education to Vermont After School, there are requirements around regulations called EDGAR and OMB guidance. Can you scroll down, please? And lastly, you will submit a report on September 15th, by September 15th. All right, now, now we're getting into the meat of the application. There are character limits for each question. So what we're going for is brevity. We're looking to, we know it's a 2-week turnaround, so we need these areas like addressed, but you don't have to write a small short story. It can be pretty straight and to the point. So what I would like to do though, before we do this, I'd like to bring you to the scoring rubric in Appendix A, and we actually only have Appendix A. So thank you, Holly. So this is what the readers are gonna see. And the reason I bring your attention here is because point by point through the narrative, you are going to have a score. The scoring rubric is going to have the same exact things that you're addressing point by point. And you can see here what the readers are reading and looking at and scoring and the weight that each question has. I think it's just helpful to see how it rolls out in this way. So I would recommend maybe looking pretty closely at this as you go back and answer the questions in the narrative. Yeah, so maybe stop at one of them, for instance. Okay, so for instance, under program details, the space is to be, the space that's going to be used for the program is described, including how it's appropriate for the ages of the children and youth being served, and sufficient in size. So when we get to program details, the first bullet under there is about space. So Holly, could we go back up to the first section, please? Thank you. So start off by describing your agency and organization, its structure, staff, history of successful grant management. We know that some of you might be in a new program, so describe what that's going to look like and what your proposed fiscal management will be. The next area is, how did you decide what the need for this project is within your community? And describe the youth who will be served by it. C is the funding priorities table. And I want to spend a little time here because if you recall, Holly shared the funding priorities in the table above. And so these are point by point, the same ones in that table. And you don't have to do all 6 of them. You can choose 1, you can choose 2, 3, you can choose all of them if you want to, but you will get priority points if you choose more than 1. So that's something to keep in mind. If you check the box, then you will need to fill out the white areas. So let's take the first one, for example, expanding access to programs by addressing affordability for K-12 children and youth and their families. So without grant funding, what would the weekly cost per student be? And with it, what would your cost per student be? So say you don't choose expanding access by increasing weekly program slots, which is the 3rd one down, you do not need to fill out the number of weekly program slots or the estimated number if you had grant funding. Holly, anything else here to help this make any better sense? Is that good?
I was trying to find the unmute button. No, I think that's great. There's a, just to clarify a couple of questions, the rubric is for the reviewers to use when they're scoring, and each grant will be scored by multiple reviewers. So that's not something that you have to fill out as part of the process. A couple of quick questions. It is okay if you have not offered summer programming before to submit. We do want new programs in areas where we haven't had programs before. This is just for summer. It's not for after school in the fall. And yes to partnering with schools. We encourage all of you to partner with schools. The questions about, you know, a swimming program won't be outdoors. If it's using the pool, that's fine. The idea of outdoors and active is the idea that they're active. They're not just sitting in chairs all the time. And then the point on reimbursement is that the way the federal dollars work is that programs will need to run your program and then submit an invoice to Vermont After School. We collect the invoices, we submit it to the Agency of Ed, we get paid, and then we pay you. And we'll do that on a monthly basis. So that's how the reimbursement works, as opposed to a grant where you get the money up front and then you spend it down. Suzanne, let's keep going and I'll continue to watch the chat.
Thank you. All right, so if you would scroll down. All right, so if you could go up just a little bit, please, to D. Thank you. So this section, D is what are you going to do? What are your activities? And how are they going to support the funding priorities that you've chosen, the needs of your community? And we're thinking, you know, this is our post-pandemic summer. And so we're looking to re-engage youth and connect them, provide learning and healing, and also meet the immediate needs of families. So what are the activities that are going to support all of that within your summer program? And we do encourage, I saw some questions coming through around collaboration. And what I'd like to point out is that this whole project, this whole getting the grant available and out there for people to apply came from a state level coordination, collaboration and partnership. And so Vermont After School really encourages working with community partners, including schools, as Holly just said. So if you're doing that, who are your partner organizations, and how are you working together, and what role are they playing? Under program details, you're going to describe the space that you're going to be using for the program, how the space is appropriate for the age of the children, and that it's sufficient in size for the numbers that you want to serve. The next series of questions are yes, no, but then if the answer is yes, you describe it, and if the answer is no, you explain it. And so the first one is, are measures in place to provide low or no cost programming for eligible students? And so you'll see if yes, describe how you're doing that. What does that look like? Sliding scale fee or scholarships or whatever it is that you're choosing to do. And if not, please explain that. Same with our students with disabilities and our special needs able to fully participate in the program. You're going to address transportation if it's included in the project, and will nutrition, including snacks and meals, be provided to youth? And if yes, what will be provided? And if no, please describe how nutrition will be available. And I think that what we meant by that is if you're a program that has students bring their lunches and their snacks, that may be one thing that you do, but then there might be children who don't have availability to nutrition. And so how will you address that as well? Let us know what the project coordinator's qualifications are, and then describe your staffing. And if you're adding staff, how will they be chosen for this project? And what qualifications are you going to require? What kind of training and support will you be providing for staff as well? This is pretty important if you have new people, if you're hiring high school youth, you're adding staff, you have staff that hasn't worked in the summer before, and I guess we're kind of calling this a summer like no other. So how are we talking about the reconnecting and all of the priorities we have talked about for helping kids reconnect and heal? Then here's the program summer schedule, and it's pretty straightforward. When do you start? When do you end? Which days of the week are you in session? And when do you start and end on each of those days? Evaluation. How are you going to evaluate the effectiveness of the program activities that you outlined in an earlier question, and in helping children and youth re-engage, connect, learn, and heal, meet the immediate needs of families, and measure the outcomes and the funding priorities you have identified? So that's from the table. So the funding priorities that you have chosen, how will you measure them? And that should be pretty straightforward because you know, you're saying what you would have done without funding and what you would do with funding. So you've already made your target points. Here's the budget. Please include in here specific details like using, like for staff salaries, for instance, you're going to say, you know, how much per hour, how many hours, or if they're on salary, however you do it, just give us the formula for how you're figuring things out, or what it is you're exactly buying for equipment, and then what the cost would be for this project, and then the funding request from this project. If you have other secured funding, please include that. And if you don't have other secured funding, and this is the only funding that you're going to be getting, you will receive 2 priority points, I believe, for having this be your only funding stream. Can you scroll down, please? And if you would provide a budget narrative that explains the table, and then any other sources of funding as we just talked about, if you would describe that. I wanted to point out a note that if you're already receiving federal reimbursement for meals, you would need to use that. You can't ask for nutrition here if you're already receiving federal reimbursement. If you would scroll down, I think we're at the end here. Now we're back to the reader's rubric. And I just saw a comment come through asking me to repeat something, but I'm not sure what it asked me to repeat. Did you see what that was, Holly?
Your statement about other funding.
I'm not sure which statement, but I'll answer you with two answers. If you have other funding that you're using, include that. And if you have no other funding, then you will get priority points. And actually, Holly, I think the priority points are at the very bottom of the reader's rubric. So if you scrolled all the way to the bottom, you'll see that you will earn 5 extra priority points if you address 2 or more priority areas, funding priority areas, and you will receive 2 additional points if this is the project's only funding stream. I hope that answered the question.
I think that did. Great. I hope. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Holly, do you have anything to add?
I was just picking up on some of the questions. So yes, other secured funding can include tuition from families who can afford it. Just be sure to pay attention to the questions in there about how you're making sure that those who can't are able to participate. Enrichment programs and drop-in programs are eligible. You do not have to be running a full day program, especially for older youth. You may not have high school students all day in a program. However, what the scoring rubric and the reviewers will really be looking for is are you meeting the need in the community? Are you providing appropriate based on the age of the students and the needs of family and so forth. For the libraries, I think there were a few questions about the minimum is 20,000, for this grant. So I know there were a number of questions about the minimum, including from one of the libraries. So yes, that is the minimum. You can, you could partner, a couple of libraries could partner together and come in together for funding. But we will keep it that way. For the school questions, well, there was one question about a licensed regulated program that runs. So licensed childcare programs are eligible to apply. However, with schools, public schools are receiving millions in dollars to expand learning supports, including after school and summer. And so the Agency of Education would like schools to use those dollars and make that part of their learning recovery plan. And there is additional or a separate stream of funding for independent schools that we'll provide a link to as well. Field trips are allowable use of funding. So that is okay. Straight scholarships is a little bit trickier. I don't know why I'm still sharing. Let me come out of that for a second. So straight scholarships, the dollars can't be used for straight scholarships. So we couldn't set up a fund with these dollars that would allow a family to apply for a scholarship to go to a sports camp. We checked into that. That was not allowable. But what you can do as a program provider is use these dollars to reduce the cost of your program across the board for all students, or to put a sliding fee scale, or to provide scholarships that way. For programs that, Jillian, for partnering with another program, if it's more of a field trip thing that you're sending students to, then you can pay for field trip fees. If it's enrolling them in a program, then I would encourage you all to perhaps look at applying together to see how, and through that partnership, you could reduce the cost and expand the accessibility. Let's see, if you're running 2 different programs, Suzanne, do you have thoughts on how they should apply if they have 2 different programs, a full day program for ages 6 to 11 and a half day program for teens? Would it come in as one grant application where they differentiate, or would it be better to come in as 2, especially given the limits on the character length?
I think that's the program's call. I think it might be hard to get both of those incorporated into one proposal, given the limit of space for each of the questions, it sounds like they'd be describing two different programs.
That was my thought as well. As far as proposed hours, so that table that Suzanne shared, we really are looking for, if you had these dollars, what would you do? So, you know, that's why it had the two columns. So without these dollars, here's what your program would look like. And if you're not gonna have a program at all, that might just be all zeros or something, right? But, you know, here's what it would look like with these dollars. So if you're expanding hours, then you would, you know, put in your proposed hours, assuming you get this grant. If you're expanding space or capacity, the same sort of thing. If you are looking at a bigger space, that's great. We really, really, really wanna work with you to expand that capacity. This grant would only pay for summer though. So this will only go through August 31st. So if it's a space that you're gonna use then for after school, the grant couldn't continue into the school year. Nicole, what else are you seeing in questions?
Holly, can you just clarify that licensed programs can apply, but that piece around licensed programs that are run as part of a school system? Still a few questions about that.
Yes, okay. So licensed regulated childcare programs are eligible to apply, whether it's for-profit, privately owned, or a nonprofit based program. Schools are really pointed towards the other funding sources. So out of the federal dollars coming to Vermont, 90% of those dollars are running through schools. So instead of so this pot of money, this 1.5 million was really set up for non-school based programs because the money isn't flowing that way. If you have additional questions about that, we can follow up, you know, to look into individual pieces.
Holly, some other questions in here about what about universities that run programs? Are they eligible to apply?
I will have to double check on that. I don't want to speak out of turn, so we will double check. Susan and I will double check on that one.
Okay. What about virtual programs versus in-person programs?
There's nothing in the grant application that says that virtual programs cannot apply. I do know that when I listen to the governor, like the push is to really get youth back, children back in person for that connection and engagement and support. So I would think about that in the application and how you talk about how you're doing that. This question about multi-years versus just this year, this funding application that we're talking about today is just for this summer. There are talks at multiple levels across our state about how to do universal access long-term and over time. And the federal dollars do continue through 2023. But at this point, the state wants to set this competition up, learn from it, see where we can fill in gaps, see what we need to do differently, see what you all need in the field, and then build from there, and then figure out what needs to be done differently for the school year, what needs to be done differently for next summer, and so forth and so on. So this is not a multi-year grant competition at this point. I think the 20,000 minimum was really put in order to give a base where people would have enough to do something. I mean, when you listen to Governor Scott and Senator Sanders, they're making a big ask of the field and of all of us to make sure that every child has a place to be that's free or low cost and has something to engage in. It's a big ask. And so we're trying to figure out a range for these dollars that allows communities to respond to that big ask. So I agree, going from 0 to 20 is a big ask. This whole endeavor is a big ask. And that's why I started with a huge thank you, because it's the right thing to do. It's what our kids and youth need. And I know it puts a lot on all of you. Let's see, 3-year plan for building growth. Yes, that would be ideal. I'm hoping that conversations, continue. And I'm hoping all of you stay engaged and that we learn from this summer, and that we learn, about after school as well. If your program is free and you'd like to offer stipends to low-income kids who need to work, can we do that? If you mean, can you offer stipends for youth who are working in your program, the answer is yes. The links are shared on the page. Suzanne, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that that it would be for youth working in the program. I'm not sure if the question was, can we pay youth to come to the program, but I just wanted to be clear on that.
Thank you. So once again, I said that licensed regulated programs are able to apply. So universities we're checking up on, nothing blocks virtual. You cannot purchase a vehicle and you cannot build a building. So capital costs would not be allowable. Purchasing a van would not be allowable, but renting, having a bus contract for transportation or other means such as that would be allowable. Other questions, Nicole, that I should pick up on?
There's a question in here about minimum number of children required. Some folks only have licensed space for 11 youth. Is that too small?
No, there's no minimum. But I think what you would want to do in your grant application is talk about the need, right? And why that program that you're providing for those 11 children is really needed. And then maybe there's other ways that you expand, right? So maybe you're adding hours or weeks, or you're adding mental health supports or literacy or language supports, or something else that you're doing to take the program that you have and you're making it even better. So I would think about that.
Holly, the other one that's come up a few times is, does a program have to serve food in order to be eligible versus youth and families providing lunch? And what about if you're only running a partial day?
So the assurances are that food and water and snacks, are available and accessible. And we always partner closely with the Agency of Education and Hunger Free Vermont around the summer food program, so we can help connect you that way. If the children or youth who are coming to your program are bringing their own food, that's okay, but what we're asking is that you're paying attention to, is everybody able to bring their own food and enough food? And do you have additional food available there for those who need it or have forgotten their lunch or something like that? So there is a question in there that asks if you're providing food or not, and asks you to explain what you are providing, and if you're not, why not? What have you set up to address that?
I know you mentioned that you can't do capital costs as far as building a building, but what about purchasing tents that are more like temporary spaces?
Tents, supplies, materials, equipment, those are all allowable. And short-term programs are allowable as well. But once again, you'll want to speak to the need and who you're serving, and how you're, with these dollars, hopefully able to serve more, or serve them in a different way, or expand access in some way. Trying to see.
We will provide information about how to, we'll provide the link to make sure folks know how to apply for a DUNS number. We saw that a bit ago.
And Nicole, it's embedded in the application. So you just have to click on the DUNS number and it will bring you right there.
And that's because of the federal dollars.
That's right. That's right.
I think that just slowing down. So you can do, if you're a larger organization and you have more than one program component, and you want to submit more than one application, that's fine. And these are expenditures that, yes, you do have to pay up front. And then you will submit your costs and be reimbursed. Just a note on the multiple opportunities from one organization. You know, I would recommend you do it in a way that makes sense, right? So if it's really a vastly different program, you know, the example that was given, like, is a half day, something for high school students, and then versus a full day for elementary school students, you know, that looks really different. If it's the same program at multiple sites, then it may make sense, you know, then doing one application would make sense because it's the same program, it's just in multiple locations. So think about that. Submit questions. So we do have the link set let up so that you can submit questions as we go along. We will be compiling those. We'll compile the ones from today as well. So we'll have the frequently asked questions posted. We're not able to sit down and talk through everybody's application with them just because of the volume and the tight timeline, but definitely submit questions as they come up as you're writing so that we know about that. The reimbursement will be on a monthly basis. So you won't have to go the whole summer, but we'll do it, you know, your expenses during the month of June, your expenses during the month of July, your expenses during August. And as I said before, we'll collect those. There'll be a deadline. Everybody will get them in for June. We'll compile them and we'll send them to the Agency of Education. They'll reimburse us. And then we'll, as soon as we get that funding, we'll cut checks to all of you.
Holly, there's a question about readers and who reviewers are. So in general, there will be readers interstate within the state and without the state. We look for a neutral, balanced group of people. Each grant proposal will have 3 sets of eyes on it and scoring it. And we do look for a very balanced group to do this.
Regarding the free reduced rate, Suzanne, do you want the number of students or do you want the percentage of students?
Percentage would be great.
I haven't heard anything beyond of the summer funding. I have heard the same things that all of you have heard about the governor's priority, the attention to universal after school. We do know that the federal funding runs for multiple years. I can't express, this has been such a huge lift and a big push to try to get this out to you. We know it's late as far as summer planning goes. And, you know, we've been, you know, saying that all along. The window is getting smaller and smaller to really impact your planning. This is when the federal dollars came through. So there's just been a huge push to try to get this up and open. So I don't know beyond this piece. I'm not sure what to do about the reimbursement. I would encourage folks to apply. And then we can look on a case-by-case basis if there's something there. Part of it is Vermont After School also doesn't have $1.5 million in our coffers to turn around and write checks for. So we do rely on the Agency of Education to get us the dollars, which they will draw down from the federal. So that's, and those are all set up with the federal requirements around the reimbursement piece. So I know, believe me, I know the strain that puts, but I guess I encourage you to please apply, to let us know what your needs are, and then we will see where things land, and try our best to help expand access wherever we can. Once again, this is recorded, so we will post it on that page that Nicole just put the link to for anybody who came in late or wants to watch it over and over again, or share it with others. That's fine. And once again, any questions that you have as you're going through the process, please submit those. Please, as Sue is saying, partner with each other. If the 20,000 minimum sounds too daunting, partner with schools as well, other community partners. Really think about as best we can. I know with the short timeline and where we are in late April, but really thinking about how can we do things different this year. How can we take half-day programs and make them full day? How can we make things fun, or give the children that you work with access in a different way to something that you haven't been able to provide before? I know 1.5 million in a lot of ways sounds like a lot of money, and I know in other ways it's probably not enough. But knowing what the needs are and what your ideas are really, really, really important to this ongoing conversation about what is needed, and what additional funds might be needed this summer, in the fall, or next summer. So, please, share your ideas. And I thank you in advance for taking the time, to fill out the application, to send your questions, to, think thoughtfully about all of this, and just know how much we appreciate all your efforts and all that you are doing. I think we will close there. It's almost 1. And as I said, reach out with questions. We're on this journey with you, and really are doing our best to try to make it all work, and see you as partners in all of this. So thank you again, and be in touch.